Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James.
That was the Attorney General of the United States getting buried by a comparison to Harry Potter. That is not a joke. That is a documented fact. And Pam Bondi had no answer for it. She came to this hearing with a binder full of opposition research on the members asking the questions. She tracked their search histories. She called a respected lawmaker a washed-up lawyer. She did everything except answer a single direct question about why predators are protected and survivors are exposed. If you want the full breakdown tracked every day, hit subscribe, because now watch how Moskowitz built this case from the ground up.
We've known each other a long time, and I'll always be appreciative for your assistance when you were Attorney General in Florida after the shooting at my high school at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. In my hometown of Parkland, when we passed a bipartisan bill, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which was the largest policy response to a school shooting in American history. Your department also prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law a constituent of mine and former felon that had plans to kill me when he was picked up by law enforcement after he was target practicing in his backyard with 2 rifles, a scope, a silencer, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, an anti-Semitic manifesto. My name was the only name on their target list, and my kids found out about this from their friends at school. So thank you. However, the most transparent administration in American history. Before Trump, we didn't know the word transparency, apparently. It's been 12 months since you gave Republican influencers part 1 of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened. The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax. He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama. Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey discharge petition. Republicans drop a rule, a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House says passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Trying to stop the necessary 218 signatures, according to Republican members that signed it, the White House brought them into the Situation Room, you know, the place where the president goes for time of war, promising things like appropriations or maybe even to primary them. People in the room say you were there. It didn't work. We get the 218 signatures. We eventually passed the Massey petition. You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress. Every member of the House except one, and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them. Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2008, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. He and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public, and in 2012, we found out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. There are documents in the files that dispute the president's claim. that he kicked Epstein out of his club. Allegedly, the president said that he asked Epstein to leave. Supported now, that's disputed though, statements from the manager of the club. Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see you flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm going to give it a grade. I just want to see how good it is. So give me your best one.
Here is what Bondi just sat through. 12 months of stall tactics. Named, dated, sequenced. A false oath statement from the FBI director, caught on the record. Survivors in the room who reached out to the DOJ, every one of them, and everyone ignored. An 86-page prosecution memo and a draft indictment, still redacted from members of Congress. She called it privileged. It is not privileged. An email from Epstein to Maxwell containing Trump's own statements about their relationship. She checked with staff. Staff could not make it privileged either. The question Moskowitz asked was simple. Will you unredact this? She said privileged 3 times in 10 seconds and stopped talking. That is not a legal defense. That is a person who knows what is in the document.
Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those 2 documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you unredact this?
You were lead counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
They're not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
to
if we
continue
review them
to
and they're not
protect
privileged,
Donald
Time belongs to
Trump.
the member.
We'll be happy to release them.
We'll
after
stop the
review.
clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
Even though you used improper redactions to protect Donald Trump and other predators associated with Jeffrey Epstein, you did the exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted, and it was not. And it's clear this was not a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names. 1 is redacted. 31 are not. So someone looked at it and decided to redact something. And I will tell you that that is clearly intentional to intimidate these survivors and victims. Now, in an interview last week...
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche...
You can't go off script.
...said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you, who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
Gentlemen, time has expired.
Pam Bondi is gone. Trump fired her, but the damage she did is not gone with her. She protected men whose names are still blacked out. She exposed the women those men abused. She tracked what members of Congress were reading and brought their search histories to a public hearing as a weapon. A DOJ official said on a secret recording that Maxwell's prison transfer was against Bureau of Prisons policy, and that Bondi is a yes person who wants whatever Trump wants. She called every hard question theatrics. She called a respected lawmaker washed up. She looked at survivors seated 5 feet behind her and refused to apologize. She is gone now. The files are still redacted. The co-conspirators are still unnamed. The 86-page prosecution memo and the draft indictment are still hidden from Congress. The email from Epstein to Maxwell, the one containing Trump's own statements about their relationship, still redacted. Nothing Bondi's departure fixes any of that. The cover-up was not her personal project. It was the job she was hired to do. Like, share, and subscribe, because the next Attorney General just inherited this record.